Hi Reddit, SubvertIt here. This is a video about TapThatDraft, how to use it, answer some of your questions. I'm going to try to keep it short and as I can. I did a recording of this before. I got to be honest, I bored myself with it, so I'm really going to try to speed this up and get to some of the main points. This that you're looking at is one of the one-pager outputs, and of course the tool does a lot more than that, but this is an example of what you want to get to. I'm going to show you how to get there. Before I forget, I always forget this one, but let's just look and remind you that, because we have the DST and kicker tables on there that are shortened. I hope a lot of people will use the website because this is what I specialize in, is the streaming positions. So you can see, these are all on the front page for non-subscribers, so you can see examples of how I do forecasts for all the weeks and all the different data that is forecasted weeks ahead. So you can get the list of all 32 teams. Anyway, back to the tool. So if we take a look at how it might work, the easy thing is that here's an example of a link I posted, and there you go, click it, and you will immediately get to the output. In this case, it is the auction settings for beer that I was recommending if you want to simulate the old beer sheets output. So you can see that even in that case with that standard, there's a lot of mention about, oh, Bowers is high, and yeah, he's like number 9 here. So anyway, that's pretty typical for value-based drafting tools that will happen, but at least if that's what you're concerned with, that's what you're worrying about, then those are the settings. However, I'm going to go back and show. All right, so when you come to the form, what you want to look at is all the roster settings and the scoring settings. It's all things you've seen before. In my case, some special things to point out. Since I specialize in streaming, there's a special quarterback setting for setting that baseline. People asked for a tight end premium. I'm going to mention this now. You can compare all the rankings that you generate here against a setting. Against a reference list. And normally we do go by ADP because you want to say, oh, how is this list comparing to what the ADP says? But borrowing from Abusing Draft Rankings, thanks to Juicebox1, so generous and so glad he's willing to help. You can also compare the rankings against different other reference lists to see how it compares. And all this is really about trying to guess how your league is going to behave. So let's get Snake Beer Plus, go in the draft room, we set it up, and I'll try to answer questions that I've seen. The first one is, what should I be following? We made this as a quick reference list, so this is meant to be like something you could pull out on your smartphone or something, or if you print it out or whatever, and you don't need to do anything necessarily. But for the interactive version, as online, what you're supposed to do is choose the player you like best, who's near the top, and click the little button to get him drafted. And then he'll get added to the drafted players list over there. And then you can keep track of how your league goes. And that's it. And then you can switch to the by position view to get a better idea. I'm going to turn on to show the drafted players, because then this gives you an idea of who's been taken at what position so far. And you can see that it remembers who you've clicked between. You can just switch back and forth all the time. And you can also see it here. I hope you'll also appreciate this view here. You can also get used to seeing the positions in this list while also getting an idea for their distribution. You see how the wide receivers are, see how the quarterbacks are spaced out over the duration of the draft. What are you supposed to be following? They're all ordered according to the snake calculation. I could explain more about that. I'm going to come back to that later. But basically this is a way of improving on the auction ordering to account for drop-offs. So they're already sequenced that way, that's all you follow. Then there's 2 other bits of information that you can look at. One is the ADP that I talked about on the last page. So if you look over here, you'll see that, yeah, Bowers is listed at position 9 here, but actually you can wait 1 round is what this means. You can wait ... 1 round, probably safely, pick him up later. So that's, it's up to you, it's your discretion, but that's what that means. And then if there's an exclamation point, you look here at Puka, well, this says, okay, we said he's later, but he's actually likely to be picked around earlier. So you've got to reach for him relative to this draft list if you want him. And then the other thing are these up and down arrows. So that's meant to represent players who have upside or downside. There was a question about the end of the draft. Can we put players higher for upside? And actually, yeah, we do that. After the value crosses the 0 line, you'll increasingly see players ranked higher if they have more upside. And that's meant to help you because you want to pick up RBs and WRs toward the end of your draft for their upside. And not so much the tight ends. Around this time they get the same baseline as wide receivers, so that's how that's handled. So, all right. So as you're going through and you're picking the players, it's worth mentioning that the drafted players. One question is why can't I do multiple drafts at the same time? These are saved to your account, and that should normally be a convenient thing because suppose I close this, I switch windows, or I go to my smartphone, I'm logged in, I'll get exactly where I picked off. So you can switch around, I could close this browser, come back, and everything is remembered for you. If you are doing multiple drafts, you need to make 2 accounts, and it's free, so you can do that, but that's the only workaround that we have here. You can also undo players in this list. So there's a question, how do I undo players? And at the moment, this is how you do it. You go to the drafted players list, and whoever you want to undo, you do that. Or undo all picks. Let me do that one. And yeah, now they're all gone. So yeah, I talked about the ADP here, and that was with reference to the actual Fantasy Pros ADP. Maybe I can also mention what if you choose another one. So let's, in this case, just say we're going with the Yahoo default and go in here. Now we're going to compare to the actual listing in the Yahoo draft room. Okay, now Bowers, you can wait 1.5 rounds apparently, because he's listed that much later in a Yahoo league. So this will give you an idea how to directly compare in those cases. And it's going to detect which PPR you're. So right now we're in half PPR. If I picked 1 PPR, it would use the draft ordering. Okay, now let's go back and let's look at an auction draft. Now in the snake draft, there was no positional scarcity column. Again, that's because I'm gonna give an example that's baked into the snake value to optimize your points. But for auctions, it is more relevant in a way. So you got your positional scarcity column here, and that is mostly for balancing your roster. So there's, this has been debated for years. There's been so many opinions, but my statement on it is that the way to use it is if you have 2 players. Let's just go to the by position view, and suppose I have 2 similar valued players. So I got Burrow here at $19 and $18. Harrison, there we go. Now this one has a positional scarcity of 15 if you had drafted that low, and this one 23%. So if you had already drafted all those receivers, you would go for the lower number, because that means that more value is taken from that position. It might be a way for you to better balance out your portfolio, your roster. Sorry, I think of it like portfolios, but there we go. Now the other things that you have here extra is there's no ADP, there's now an AAV column. So what is that? Where is my ADP, people ask? Well, with an auction, you're not trying to compare against which round, which is what ADP is. You're trying to compare against what is the going rate, what is the price that people are usually paying for this player, and that's what AAV is, and it's measured. And again, this will automatically select for if you're closest to 1 or 0 or half PPR, and you'll get a different list here. So the actual tool puts out these numbers under the $sign, and what you want to do is maybe keep an eye on when's it a deal. Yes, the value-based drafting tools, based on the projections that are out there now, do evaluate quarterbacks higher, and that's just based on the point forecast relative to the baseline. Nothing to do about that, but you can see that, okay, it actually looks like a relative value, in that case. Or you can see when it, maybe a player is, it's the reverse. The player is more likely to be out of reach in some cases. So the way you should normally do it is, let's do some examples here. I'm going to go back to the single list, and let's draft some players. So I'm going to put in Chase. We're going to pay, let's pay less for him to show you what inflation looks like. So if your league is routinely drafting players low, let's just go 50, 50, 50. That means there's more money and in the pool of your league, And later on, they're going to have more money to pay for players, so the price goes up. That's why you can see this inflation column increasing slightly when players have been going for less. Now, if you've also underspent, then you should try to go ahead and splurge. Why not? Go ahead. But if you've been keeping the same pace, you might eventually consider players too inflated in value. Then you better wait for the value. Inflation will come back down, will come around again. And of course, inflation can go the other, it can be deflation. And then you can see when your league has paid too much. And depending on if you also hopefully you haven't, but then you can make a decision who to get there. There are a couple features I didn't mention in the last one, that besides the drafting, there's also the chance to mark players. So there's a little function just for highlighting. There's no meaning to it, except let's suppose, take those back. Let's suppose I just want to say rookies are going to get blue, and injury-prone people I'm making it up completely, as red, or whatever it is. It's just a reminder to yourself. And again, these will be remembered for you, the link to your account. In fact, even if I switch back to a snake draft, you'll see that they're saved there. Okay, so maybe I should mention a bit about, there's a question, how does the snake number actually work here? What's that doing? What it's doing is looking ahead, so and judging if there's a drop-off in positional value. So we have an example here. Hurts, it looks like after him, there's not going to be a quarterback taken for a while. So, maybe that's safe. But let's find an example by looking at the auction draft. Because what it's doing, they all start with the auction draft. If you use any other value-based drafting tool, it's going to show you essentially the same as the auction ordering that I'm showing you here. And it says, how can we actually beat the auction ordering? Now, I noticed one before. I think it was Tyreek Hill and comparing against Kamara. So in this case, in an auction, it looks like you should pay more for Hill and more for Kamara. And you might logically think, oh, well, then in a snake draft, I should also pick up Tyreek first and Kamara later. But what the tool's actually looking at, this is actually a neat example, because if you look one round ahead from Kamara, there's going to be 3 more running backs gone, and then, maybe not a cliff, but a drop-off in value. So you don't want to find yourself, maybe you're better to take Kamara now and then take a wide receiver later. So if you compare the two options, running back now or wide receiver now, running back later, wide receiver later, then that's what the trade-off is calculating. And you can see in Tyreek Hill case, there's actually some value still remaining here in the wide receivers. So let's look back at them at the snake and see if Tyreek actually is still above Kamara. Okay, we're back in here, and now we see clearly Kamara is above Tyreek, and that's because of the drop-off that was detected. Now, you can again still see here that maybe you can be clever and actually wait, but the tool is telling you how to optimize, assuming your league would go by the auction ordering. So that's the assumption here. Is that the rest of your league is using a similar smart tool, and you want to beat that by getting ahead of them to overall optimize your value. So that's how the snake calculation is working. I realized now that I forgot to show you the printouts again, so they're all at the bottom, hit the end, so you can see it by position, and there you go. There's the one-pager, you can print that out. And there's also the corresponding one for a single list that you can look at as well. Okay. Let's look quickly back at the auction page again, because there are a couple things I meant to mention. One is that the inflation column appears here because the dynamic mode was on by default, and that will usually be the case for most people, especially if you're subscribed, it will be there. The other thing you could do in this case and use the inflation column is account for keepers. So suppose somebody was able to keep for some low amounts here before the draft even started, before the auction draft started, and you'll get the inflation adjustment. So when you enter your draft, you already know the relative amounts people are going to be willing to pay. You can also see them by clicking on the drafted toggle that's over here. on the right side. So then you get to see them in the actual sequence. Let's look at the snake draft, because that also has a dynamic mode I didn't talk about before. So if we switch to a snake draft, you can also choose keepers in advance the same way. I recommend to do that with the dynamic mode off. This is where you can see it. And let's just go down through the list and take players. And with the dynamic mode on, it will rearrange this list now to account for the players who are missing. And that will happen automatically. So let's hit on. And there you go. Now it's the list has a new look to it. You cannot show the drafted players in this case when the dynamic mode is on for a snake draft, because the reordering is too complicated. But that's how it works. So then, yeah, as you take players, here's an example we can grab onto. So Brock Bowers here, if we take the next tight end after him, that should create a little cliff. Where's he going to go? He should go up. There he is. He rises up because the tight end after him means that if you wait on tight end, you're more likely to lose out on some value. So that's how the dynamic mode is meant to work in this case. That's everything, I think. So, thanks. Good luck to everybody. I hope you get out there and tap that draft. And good luck. I'll see you soon to talk about streaming.